Okay, this is System Concepts, translation. Number 23, worrying about the pace. From the article 103, The Discernments Build the Vessel. From the book Talks About the Steps of the Ladder, Volume 3, by Rav Michael Lyman. What does it mean to worry about the pace? To worry about the pace means to worry about the pace of discernments. What enables discernments? The discernments between the will to receive and the will to bestow. Not just to learn quickly, a few pages in an hour, but rather between the will to receive and the will to bestow. In the current state of a person, in their daily schedule, where are they stuck between these two desires? Between the desire to receive and the desire to bestow? In society. Therefore, to be able to worry about the pace of receiving discernments between the will to receive and the will to bestow, a person is meant to work as much as they can in the society with the intention to worry about the pace, to move as much as possible from state to state, to discern how much they are inside or not inside those states, or if they need to be in those states or not, etc. The discernments are in the society. There a person can receive very negative discernments that they need to collect. From the society, they can also receive power to continue, and also the understanding that they do not want to continue towards the will to bestow. This is called worrying about the pace. It is called to strengthen oneself. What Bala Sulam says in the introduction to Talmud HaSefirot, that the Creator puts the hand of a person on the good fortune and says to him, take this. He does not tell the person to take something else, not the will to receive, and not the will to bestow itself, rather to take discernments.
I love that he writes this specifically. I mean, I love that you picked this out, and it's specifically about discernments. I think that's really good.
It's actually what we just talked about.
Well, yeah, I mean, the work is all discernments. I mean, let's not fool ourselves. I mean, that's why we're there for. It's all about getting discernments in every single opportunity you have. That's why reality is built for you. It's to get discernments from that reality.
It's funny that, or not. It's not actually funny, but it's really awesome that you chose this, because yesterday I was going through this, and it's like you answered everything that I was thinking and discerning about overnight.
It's a very great force. I spend every week on Shabbos reading the books that talks the steps of the ladder. They're just full of discernments of how to work with the society. Every time I would go to the society and I'd be told certain things, and I would go back to the books, and the society would tell me one thing, and I would think another, and I would go to the books, the talks the steps of the ladder, to basically say, Rav, tell me I'm wrong. And I would open the book, and I'd read something, and it basically would say, Zakkai, you're right. Continue. It's like, and I would get frustrated. It's like, I want you to tell me I'm wrong, not tell me I'm right. And this continued going on, and it just, by reading and internalizing, it just built a whole different relationship with the society, to know how to use them in the most targeted way, how to get the most out of society.
Do you feel better when you're told you're wrong than when you're right?
Yeah, because then I can advance, then I can actually do something. If I know I'm right, fine, I'm right. Now what? It's when I'm told I'm wrong. Every time anyone says to me any kind of criticism or negative comment, even if it looks like I'm saying that it's nonsense or anything, I always check everything. Every single negative comment I'm told, even if it's the most outrageous one, I always check myself afterwards. What am I meant to do with this? Because with those I grow. If I'm just told, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, that's it. What am I meant to do with that? Continue, I'm going to continue anyway. So it's the negative discernments, and that's what it said in the translation, that there a person can receive very negative discernments that they need to collect. Sometimes we actually need the negative discernments to actually advance. It's like, Zakkai, what you're doing is wrong. Okay, why is it wrong? And I think, and I maybe they've got a point, and maybe I should change direction. Maybe I should even become more in that direction. The idea is that you could say that's the annulment. The annulment is when a friend is talking to you, and even if they're saying the most outlandish comments, the annulment is giving them a place and scrutinizing them and checking them out and checking them with the sources. Does it match up? Maybe I am wrong. And the idea is to scrutinize and criticize yourself because you basically want to advance. And notice what it says, the discernment between the will to receive and the will to bestow. Because you're basically trying to build a screen. And a screen is that mediator between the will to receive and the will to bestow. So the more you see the dichotomy between them, that basically builds a desire for actually wanting a screen. Because if you see the will to receive and the will to bestow as like, oh, they're the same, they're equal, they're symbiotic, then you don't need a screen. It's when you see the dichotomy between them. And that's why part of the problem with people is that they don't want to reach the realization, the revelation of evil, that there is no bestowal in the quality of reception. That with the quality of reception, you can only receive or restrict. That's all you can do with the quality of reception. And then you've got the quality of bestowal, right? Which is the same thing. All you can do is either bestow or restrict yourself. So you've got these two qualities, and you can't receive in bestowal, and you can't bestow in reception. And part of cleaning our concepts is to reach that revelation of evil, that why do I even need the quality of bestow? Because many people think, oh, I'm below the barrier, I can already start bestow because, I'll act like the quality of bestow, right? Which is phase 2. Phase 4 understands it actually needs the quality of bestow. It can't really bestow in the quality of reception. It realizes how egoistic it is, how it only has this quality of reception, and it needs this quality of bestowal that it didn't have before. Well, in phase 2, it thinks, oh, I can be like the quality of bestowal. So it tries in the quality of reception to act like bestowal. And that is why we need to collect discernments on the differences between them to actually desire what we don't have, to desire that quality of bestowal. And the screen becomes that enabler to convert that egoism into altruism. Yes, Moshe?
You said that the quality of bestowal can bestow or restrict, but that sounds strange because by the masach itself, it's kind of restricting, and that's kind of like the bestowal. So I don't know how it can do one or the other. I thought it can only just do one thing, just bestow, because through that screen, that's bestow. Through that reflected light, that's bestow. So how can it restrict bestow?
By not having a screen. If you don't have a screen, right, or if your screen gets disabled, right, then you're restricting your bestowal.
Okay, so I guess if the screen comes down, then you can restrict your bestowal. That makes sense.
Right. Every time you could say that you give up on the light, right? Where in the concept of Kabbalah, it's called bitush or makif and or pnimi, which is the clashing between the surrounding light and the inner light. And then what happens? The screen moves up from the tabul to the peh, right? Mm-hmm. It basically goes up. What does that do? It's stopping that receiving of light, of that internal power, right? It sort of goes into a descent, basically, right? So then you're not bestowing anymore.
Right. Right, that makes sense. Yeah. I tell you one thing. Once you get your screen, it's only working with the screen from that point forth, right? There's no more. I mean, the will to receive is there, but it's only used to advance, right? To convert.
Exactly. You have all your will to receive before the barrier, and then after the barrier, you're working on your screen to decide how much you're going to activate that will to receive.
Right. Okay.
So it's like you own it, and then afterwards you get to use it. Use your will to receive.
But can you clarify for me, please? Lose or drop the screen, or what did that mean? I mean, once you develop a screen to a certain level, it would actually drop?
So the idea is after the barrier, what you're doing is you're building five faces, five Parzufim, which are called Galgalta, Ab, Sag, Ma, and Bon. And those are future relationships with the lower faces, how you're going to interact with them after the parasa. And what happens each time is you're basically, you build a face for a certain degree, right? So Gagalta, for example, is called Dalid. So you've got a memory of coarseness, which is Dalid, and then you've got memory of clothing, which is also Dalid, the fourth phases. So it's 4-4. And then what happens is, because you're not receiving into that phase 4 that you've done restriction on, that light pressurizes on the screen, and then basically raises it up, so it like shuts it down, and then you're building a new phase, which is called Ab. And every time you're going through it, each face that you build stays there, right? Because the idea is in spirituality, you never actually lose anything, but you feel by the last state that you've like layered on, right? It's like a cake, you're building layers on, and the highest degree, that's where you feel, right? So you still have all those lower degrees. You only feel like, your last thing. It's like, you've eaten many meals and you only feel the taste of that last meal. But you still have all that food within you. So you're building these five faces, and they're on different, their future relationships to how you're going to deal with the different phases below the barrier. Which is basically that phase 4 that's when you go afterwards into Nukadota Sag, you go into below the Tabor, which is basically that phase 4, that Malchut, and how to relate with it. And then you go through the second restriction, which is basically passing the parasa. So the idea is that each time you're going to go through these, you're going to feel that descent when the light goes back up, and then it doesn't receive it anymore. And then you're going to feel that darkness again, that power down, right? And then you're going to build a new face, and then you're going to feel powerful again, and then you're going to have it goes up, and you're going to feel that power down, and so forth.
Zaka, is that when it's that power down, is that same darkness before you get your screen?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
You basically return to the state of restriction, which is when you pass the barrier. You feel power down.
Mm-hmm.
You're not actually falling below the barrier. You still know who you are. You still know you have the quality of bestowal.
It makes sense. Yeah. It makes sense because it's a power down, and then that makes sense.
Cesar asks, I don't know if you can see the chat, but he says, by collecting discernments, I build the screen.
Yes, by collecting the discernments between the will to receive and the will to bestow, you're growing your point in the heart into basically 10 sefirot, it's called, and then that becomes your screen. So the point in the heart is the posterior of your screen. You could say the screen is the soul, right? Because it's an interaction between the will to receive and the will to bestow.
I thought the will to bestow is the screen. I'm confused here.
No, the will to bestow is not the screen. The screen is what converts the egoism into altruism, right? So the screen is on top of the vessel of reception, right? That is going to decide how much egoism, which is the will to receive, you're going to convert into altruism, into the will.
So that reflected light is the will to bestow.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Which is internal power. Internal power is the will to bestow, right? So the more internal power you have, the more will to bestow you have activated within you. When that reaches a certain threshold, that's called passing the barrier, and then it's called you have the screen. You have an active screen.
It's very strange, like the ego sucks it in, right? That's the will to receive, and will to bestow is reflected light. It's so weird.
The reflected light actually goes into the vessel. The idea is that the vessel itself is receiving that altruism. The idea is that when you pass the barrier, your sense of self shifts from your egoism to altruism, right? From the will to receive, you think, I'm the will to receive. It shifts to, I'm the will to bestow. And now that you're the will to bestow and you're in that dimension of thinking, in that perception, now what are you going to do? Well, now you're going to look down on your ego and you're going to say, okay, how much can I use? How much can I activate that and convert it from egoism to altruism? How much can I use my ego? So at the beginning, you go above your ego, right? Which is, changing the sense of self from the ego into your altruistic part. And then using the screen, you're going to be doing that conversion.
I always thought the will to bestow was a screen. I mean, that's what I thought, but I guess not.
That's what you saw. It said that you need discernments between the will to receive and between the will to bestow.
That discernment is the screen, then.
Yeah.
Building this.
You're building discernments for why do you need a screen?
Yeah.
It's like if you think you can bestow in the quality of reception, then you don't need the screen. So that's
true.
That's why before the barrier, you basically find out what is lo lishma, which is you find out that you have no quality of bestow. You find that you have no ability to bestow in the quality of reception. And that's why in phase 4, it's shown by a vessel with an arrow going in. It's like, well, where's that arrow that was trying to bestow? It's like you basically in phase 4 understand that you cannot bestow. And therefore you don't even try anymore. You just want to receive the primacy of the creator. You just want to receive that screen that will able to convert that full egoism into altruism.
But that reflected light goes in the vessel as well?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So you've got like this, you've got...
when they draw it, it's all confusing because it's easy when they draw it, a line going into the vessel. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Oh, pleasure hitting the kli, great. But when you have reflected light going outwards, which is pleasure from bestowal, it doesn't, your mind, when you're seeing that drawing, doesn't make sense that that the vessel is receiving something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, think of it like this, okay? So the idea is that you've got your vessel, right? And you've got your screen on top, right? And you've got this light coming down, which is the direct light, right? And it's going to hit your screen, right? And then you're going to have the returning light, which is sort of what's being, thrown off, right? But it doesn't actually go like this. What it actually does is it goes down like that, and then the returning light clothes the direct light. And then what happens? Well, then that clothed direct light can actually enter the vessel. That is the egoism converted into altruism.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like...
it's just bothers me. I'm getting pissed off.
It's like, think of it like this way. If you want to, if you want to extract blood from someone, right? So you need two things. You need like a vessel to hold the blood in, and you need a pin. You need a Divine, you could help me here. A syringe, right? To actually like prick the person and allow the blood to go through that thing, right? And go through, right? So on one hand, you've got two things here. You've got the vessel, right? That's holding the blood, and you've got the blood itself. So think of the vessel holding the blood as the returning light. And that's why we say that returning light is vessels of reception, right? After the barrier. And you have the blood, which is the direct light. Does it make sense?
It's kind of like opposite a little bit.
Well, let's say you're trying to inject light, right? So you're trying to inject blood into someone, right? So you need a vessel holding the blood, and then you want to inject the blood in. But without the vessel, you can't inject the blood into someone. You can't just throw blood on someone and expect it to go into his veins, right? It's like, here's some blood. It's like, that's not going to do anything. You need a syringe, which is a vessel, right? So you could say that's the vessel of, that's the returning light, right? Which like is outside, right? It's not inside, it's outside. But it allows the direct light to go inside your veins and actually go inside your body. Does that make sense to anybody?
I have one clarification I need, and I'm going to read a question from Mary after that. But we don't get a screen before the barrier. I mean, before we cross the parsa, correct? We don't develop a screen?
No, before the barrier, you don't get a screen. After the barrier, you get a screen, even before the parser.
Okay. On this side of the parser, though, as we collect discernments, we're the screen. Is this right? In a sense, as we collect these discernments, in effect, we're allowing what we're going to attain in and what we're going to reject. Yeah, it's just an analogy of a screen, because you said earlier that we're the screen.
Yeah, with a point in the heart, which becomes a screen, and the screen does that play between these two qualities of reception and bestowal. So the creator's bestowal, right? And he created a will to receive, and we, as men, are in between to convert the will to receive into the will to bestow, to basically handle that that dichotomy between them.
Okay, that's a lot clearer now. And our friend Mary, who's only listening, asked, is the screen also the tension between the will to receive and the will to bestow?
Yes, yes. That's why, it said in the article that we basically need those discernments of the difference between the will to receive and the will to bestow. And where we're going to find that, we're going to find it in the society. In the society, we're going to see constantly that tension point between these two opposite qualities. And that builds in us a need to be able to handle this dichotomy. And this gives us great advancement along the way. Should I read it again? I'll read it again. What does it mean to worry about the pace? To worry about the pace means to worry about the pace of discernments. What enables discernments? The discernments between the will to receive and the will to bestow. Not just to learn quickly a few pages in an hour, but rather between the will to receive and the will to bestow. In the current state of a person, in their daily schedule, where are they stuck between these two desires, between the desire to receive and the desire to bestow? In the society. Therefore, to be able to worry about the pace of receiving discernments between the will to receive and the will to bestow, a person is meant to work as much as they can in the society with the intention to worry about the pace, to move as much as possible from state to state, to discern how much they are inside or not inside those states, or if they need to be in those states or not, etc. The discernments are in the society. There a person can receive very negative discernments that they need to collect. From the society, they can also receive power to continue, and also the understanding that they do not want to continue towards the will to bestow. This is called worrying about the pace. It is called to strengthen oneself. What Bala Salam says in the introduction to Talmud Sefirot, that the Creator puts the hand of a person on the good fortune and says to him, take this. He does not tell the person to take something else, not the will to receive and not the will to bestow itself, rather to take discernment.
Not somehow, it's a process. But when we read the article the first time, the thing is that, we read it, it seems abstract, but after we discuss it and ask questions and so forth, when we read it the second or even third time, it takes on even a deeper meaning and an understanding. Thank you.
When Bal Hassan says take this, meaning, take the discernment, is he implying, I'm assuming he's implying that no one achieves this this barrier without those individual efforts. Like no one's going to wake up one day and say, oh, I'm there already, unless they've gone through this process, these efforts. In other words, nothing is given for free. Is that so?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why, there's the phases. The phases that show you that you're not going to wake up tomorrow morning and say, oh, I passed the barrier. It's like, where are you? It's like, oh, I'm in phase 3. It's like, well, you still got to go through 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, and then you can pass the barrier. It gives you a sort of a path to know how much are your discernments advancing you along the way, right? So the idea is that you don't just suddenly, let's say you're in the spiritual society and you're in phase 2.2, and then you think you'll wake up the next morning and pass the barrier. It's like, it's not going to happen. There's the phases are there to actually give you structure, to give you, to not sort of make you feel that you're already there. Because if you think you're there before you are, you've killed your desire, right? And then you have to like rebuild it and configure yourself to say, no, I actually didn't pass, and then really want to pass, right, and build that desire. So you could say that the problem of thinking that you passed before you have is that until you can convince yourself that you haven't passed, then you don't have any desire to actually pass.
And how is shame? What is the place of shame here? Because I feel, as Mary was saying, this tension in between observing both the will to receive and what the goal is, and knowing that disparity of form. How is shame configured? Shame is basically what gives us fuel to move towards the goal.
We've talked about that. To advance from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3 to phase 4 is done by pushing, right? You're just basically pushed by pain. And in phase 4, to pass the barrier, you have to actually want to. It has to be a desire. It has to be a pulling effect, right? Where you're being pulled towards the light, not being pushed behind by pain. The shame is where along the way you basically reveal to yourself how egoistic you are. You basically reveal to yourself, before you're like, oh, I'm a nice person, I do nice things, I've got some bestowal within me. And then slowly you advance and you basically figure out that you're a monster. You basically figure out that you have no will to bestow whatsoever in you. You have no bestowing, and you're totally egoistic from day until night, and that's all the thoughts you have are egoistic. And you thought that you were a nice person before and then bestowing and stuff. You find out you had none of it. You just had the quality of reception was just totally controlling you. That's what we call Pharaoh, right? Where the intention to receive, it was just so strong in you. And you feel that, right? You feel that state of Pharaoh, and that gives you shame. You're like, this is terrible. I thought I was such a nicer person. And that builds in you a pushing desire to want to get that quality of bestowal. The problem is it's not good enough. Shame is not good enough to actually get you past the barrier. You have to desire it because you want it, not because you're just feeling painful that, I'm not a bestowing person. It's like you can't advance if you're hungry. You have to advance because you really want the meal. Because if you're just hungry, then I could give you a different meal and that would satisfy you, right? But if you really want a specific meal, we've all been in a restaurant, right, where we're hungry, and we order something and they, by mistake, bring us the wrong dish. So if you're just thinking about being hungry, you're just going to take the dish they give you and you'll be like, I'll be fine with it. I'm not going to wait now for you to bring me a different dish. But if you want a specific thing, you want a steak, and they bring you, a well-done steak and you wanted a medium steak, you're going to basically say to them, bring me a medium steak, take the steak back and bring me a new one, right? So what's the difference between the two? The difference is that in the first example, you're just hungry. And in the second example, you want a specific dish. So you can't pass the barrier by just being hungry and saying, oh, look at me, I'm feeling terrible. You have to pass the barrier by saying, I want this quality, and I know why I want this quality.
So then this state of man, raising man and mad, that's only from phase 1 to phase 3, and then phase 4, it's a pulling effect.
No, it's still man, but it's a different kind of man, you could say. It's still a question that you want to advance. Basically, a request is man, and receiving an answer, a response, is mad, right? So the difference is that in phases before phase 4, you can get a lot of man by deficiencies, and then in phase 4, you can't advance by deficiencies. You have to advance by desire. You have to want it. You have to desire it. You're not wanting to pass the barrier because your life is terrible. And actually, before the barrier, you actually feel perfect. You actually have no deficiency to actually pass the barrier. So you only pass the barrier because you want it. You desire it. It's a positive need, not a negative need. It's like jewelry, right? It's given the idea of an adornment. You don't. The reason we call jewelry an adornment is because you don't need it, right? You desire it, you want it, right? I want this jewelry. It's like, do you need it? It's like, no. Like, are you going to die of like hunger, or are you not beautiful without it? It's like, no, I'm beautiful, just fine without the jewelry. So why do you want the jewelry? It's an addition. It's an adornment. It's an extra that I want. And that's how you pass a barrier. You pass a barrier by an adornment. You want the quality of bestowal, not because you don't have it in the quality of reception.
Right, our desire is not a deficiency for the barrier, to cross the barrier.
What's the question?
No, I'm saying it's not a deficiency we're trying to fill to cross the barrier.
Right. You're passing the barrier because you want it, not because you're lacking something. It's by desire. It's not by deficiency. You're not going to suffer if you don't pass the barrier. You just really want it. And that's why, it's called the spirit phase, right? So darkness is when you're burning that you don't have something. And then spirit is when you really want it. You're not thinking about burning. It's like if let's say your spouse goes on a trip for 6 months and she comes back after 6 months. So in that time when she's gone, you're in darkness. You're like, oh, why she's not here? You miss her. You wake up in the morning, she's not there, or he's not there. And you just feel that deficiency of they're not here with me, right? But when you're going to the airport to collect them, you're not burning. You're happy. You're excited. Well, why are you excited? She's just not next to you, just like she wasn't yesterday. It's like, because I know I'm going to go towards her. She's going to come soon. I want to be with her. I'm not feeling the deficiency that she's not with me. I'm just really, the other way around. I'm imagining I've got like a lust, a desire to be with her. And that's what I'm thinking of. Not that she's not with me, but I'm thinking of that I will be with her. I'm thinking of the future, not suffering in the present or the past. Like when we come to, let's say, system concepts, or we come to a phase 2 group, we're mostly coming out of a deficiency that we had in spiritual society, and that's what basically keeps us here. The idea is to slowly make it more egoistical and basically convince yourself that it's not just I'm here because otherwise I'll suffer. That you're actually here because you're going to get something out of it. You want something. What is the quality of bestowal going to give you?
What is it going to give me?
Glad you asked. Well, what's going to give you is, number one, it's going to give you an additional perception, right? So you can still stay with your current perception as a person, and you'll have an additional layer of perception that will give you a perception of the system. And what this will do, it will allow you to basically have control over your life. You're able to direct your desires. You weren't able to decide what your next desire will be. You'll still be hungry. You'll still need to go to work and stuff, but you're able to manipulate and control situations in your life and use your desires to get things done. You won't be fighting with yourself anymore. You won't be like constantly desiring one thing but really desiring another, and then just basically not understanding why my desire is not working out. And you're just at the end of the day, you'll just basically want the desire to bestow because it's so awesome. It's such a, first of all, it's a great place to be. And second of all, it is the goal anyway, right? They'll tell you that. But you basically have to egoistically convince yourself what you will get out of it. And every person will get something different. Every person wants a different thing, a different sense of control. And that is what bestowal gives you. Bestowal is basically control, it's influence, right? Just like we said that the creator, which is the quality of bestowal, controls us. So if I get that quality, I'm going to be able to control myself and the experience I'm experiencing, which means also other people, because I'm experiencing other people. They don't exist in themselves. They become a representation of myself. And that means that if I change myself, I'll change them. It's like, think of a spy movie, right? And so in a spy movie, let's say you find a base to infiltrate. So you have to go to the base and infiltrate the base. Well, think of a capitalist movie where he doesn't have to even go to the base. He just goes to the base within. He changes himself, and then things change externally. And that's when we go over the three concealments, which are unnecessary, impossible, and secrets. That's the secret. The secret is that everyone's inside of me and not outside of me, and therefore, if I change my internal conflict, it will solve the external conflict. So then, for example, to change my boss's mind, I don't actually have to go to my boss and externally convince him in very great ways. I just have to convince myself internally, convince my internal boss, and then my external boss will suddenly change his mind without me even saying anything to him. He'll think it's his idea.
I think I'm talking for myself and some other people. I think that's where they're confused, people. See, for me, I don't know. To me, it's a perception, a higher level, like what Moshe said on the chat. And, I'm experiencing a difference in myself interacting with people, and people have said to me, you seem different, like whatever. I'm not there yet, but I'm just saying. But some people think, like when you say, I'm going to change my boss's mind, like my mind goes like airy-fairy in a way, like bewitched or something, which it's not. Isn't it like by you being who you are and by you, taking a stand for who you are, you suddenly show up differently to others?
I would say like this. Even before the barrier, our perception changes from thinking that I'm in the world to feeling that the world is within me.
Right.
Right? So what is the difference? Well, if I'm in the world, then there's other people in the world, and they've got nothing to do with me, they're outside of me. Right? That's a broken intention where I think it's outside of me. And I'm walking around the world, and people are doing different things to me, and I'm having all different conflicts and stuff. They're outside of me. What can I do? I can't change my boss's mind. He's a different person, right? But as your perception grows, you basically understand that there's no one outside of you.
Right.
Outside of you. So then I can change my boss's mind because he's not actually an individual. He's not a separate being. He's inside me. So I can change myself. Right?
Right. Yeah.
It sounds very egoistic, but it sounds egoistic because we're still thinking that, you're manipulating people outside of you. It's like, no, the reason you can manipulate them is because you're actually inside of you. And then I would say like this, it doesn't mean you're not going to show anger at your boss or show frustration, or even you're going to allow yourself to get frustrated after the barrier as well and express that frustration because you know that external things have to be done as well and not just internal. But at the same time, you're focusing internally where you want this to go, right? So let's say, for example, you're at work and something's not, the process is not working well, and then you get frustrated and you go to your boss and you're like, I'm frustrated, everything's going to work out, it's terrible, things are going wrong. Internally, things are going right, but you want to express this externally for him to feel like, really there's some problem, right? And you're basically directing him and sort of, and you're not lying because you're actually really, your body is actually experiencing all this stress and frustration, right? So it's not a lie. It's not like, I'm an actor, I'm just playing like I care. No, you do actually care. Your body cares. You have the creator within you that has a totally different story. It's directing the situation. It's using its internal power to affect the situation from within. So it's like a double attack strategy where you're making changes externally and internally.
So what I notice is like, instead of reacting, I'm using myself now. Instead of reacting, I'm using my instrument, me.
Exactly. Your body becomes a vessel, a utility for you to use. It becomes a weapon. It becomes it's like a character in a game, right? So the idea is at the beginning you think you're in the game, and then that's a broken intention. And then a correct intention is when you understand you're playing a game. right? And then after the process, you actually get the controller. You start going this, and start doing things with your character, right? And having all these, cheat codes and stuff, right? If anyone's who's played a game. So you could say the reason it sounds so egoistic is like, think of the sentence, love thy neighbor as thyself. We've all heard this thousands of times, right? Love thy neighbor as thyself means to take the neighbor, which is someone outside of me, and to basically say, he's myself.
Right.
So it's love thy neighbor as thyself. Take somebody outside of me and put them inside of me. And that's what we say love is, right? We say love is when it's not that I'm feeling love for somebody outside of me, but the person is so important to me, they actually become part of me. And that's why we say that even if a loved one dies, he doesn't really die because his body's dying, but my love for him isn't dead. Why not? Because that love is within me. I've taken that person and internalized that person within me. And that's what love thy neighbor as thyself means. It means taking the entire world and internalizing them within. And most people think love thy neighbor as thyself is the total opposite. They think, here's my neighbor, he's someone outside of me, and I have to love him, right? As I would love myself as a separate person, I need to love him as a separate person. And it always fails. Why does it fail? Because he's not outside of you. So you're going in the total opposite direction. And that's why, like, altruism, in the world is normally very fake, and it's very shallow, and doesn't actually deal with the real problems, because you're trying to deal with it as something outside of you, and not dealing with it as a combination of it being inside of you, and you're doing external work inside of you, and internal work inside of you.
No, because you hear people like say, "Oh, when I pass the barrier, I can't wait to." You really have it all the time. You're cultivating it.
Exactly. You could say, at the end of the correction, what it means is that you no longer see the solution as something outside of you. The solution is always internal. You'll do external things, but the solution is always internal, and that's end of correction. You know your desires are corrected. They're all internalized. You understand that there's no need to do any external work, that the external work is a tool for the internal work, but it's not ever the goal. And therefore, for example, let's say you're talking with someone, and you can't seem to convince them on something. So before they bury, you're like, oh, the problem is I'm just not presenting myself well, or I'm not, that person in the end will, have to change their ways to understand me. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of correction, what you're feeling is that if you just do the correction internally, you basically, if someone's not agreeing with you, you're not agreeing with yourself. And that doesn't mean you're going to immediately change it and have to agree with yourself, because you're also going to understand why it's you're going to have to think, well, do I want to agree with myself? Or do I not want to agree with myself on this issue? But the scrutiny is internal, not external. So someone's, having a conversation with you, and they're like criticizing you and stuff, and the whole time you're basically not actually having a conversation with someone outside of you, even though that's their perception. You're actually having a conversation with yourself. And you're writing to them in the chat and stuff, and you're like, this, and this, and that. And they think they're talking to, like an individual, and you're basically talking to yourself the entire time. Mm-hmm. Like narcissism in its most extreme form, because you're basically saying that there's no one else besides me, and everybody else is just a representation of me. Like, what's more egoistic than that?
Oh, no, thanks. No, that's great.
I think we'll end here and enter the after party.